Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're tearing into what might just be the world's absolutely oldest and definitely most elaborate deception. By looking at the theological texts, historical accounts, and actual ancient grimoires, we're going to break down exactly why the figure of Iblis, or Satan, is known as the Greatest Deceiver. We're going to structure our exploration today exactly like the anatomy of a grand con. We'll be looking at the motive, the methods, the marks, and finally, the absolute masterpiece of this ultimate illusion.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Listen to this chilling quote from Sahih Muslim, because it sets the stage perfectly. It reveals that, we aren't just dealing with some chaotic, random force of evil here. No way. This is a highly organized, hierarchical syndicate. Iblis operates from a literal throne, constantly dispatching detachments and deputies, whose entire metric of success is the level of trial and chaos they can inflict on humanity. The stakes here, they are incredibly high.
But every great con has to have a motive, right? Why dedicate an entire existence to misleading humanity? Let's look at Section 1, the origin of arrogance.
To understand the motive, we have to go back to the foundational conflict. According to the Quranic account, Iblis was created from essential fire, while Adam was created from clay. And when commanded to bow to Adam, Iblis just flat out refused, stating simply, "I am better than he." That single, profoundly arrogant belief that his fiery origin somehow made him fundamentally superior to clay, well, that was the birth of his vow to mislead humanity. This entire grand con is literally fueled by ancient wounded pride.
Which brings us to the primary method of the con, sihr, or magic. The definition here from Lisan al-Arab is super revealing. Sihr isn't about wielding ultimate, universe-bending cosmic power. Actually, in Islamic terminology, it's an act where proximity to shaitan, Satan, is gained, and with his aid, the false is presented as real. It's a trick. It's a calculated illusion designed entirely to distort reality and deceive your senses.
So how does this actually manifest in the physical world? Let's move to Section 2, the illusion of power. And this brilliantly illustrates the mechanics of it. Our sources highlight some truly classic illusions used by sorcerers. Honestly, some of it's almost comical. The ancient text, the Picatrix, even mentions throwing rice into a basin just to make snakes stand on their tails and dance. It's a literal trick of the eye. They make fixed objects appear mobile or tiny objects appear massive. We also see this perfectly in the Quranic account of Pharaoh's magicians, where simple ropes and rods were made to slide around and look like real snakes to the crowd. The power isn't in creating life, it's purely in manipulating perception.
Now let's shift our focus over to the marks. Section 3, the sorcerer's trap.
You might think the marks are just innocent bystanders, but the primary victims are actually the sorcerers themselves, the folks who genuinely believe they are the ones in control. Contrasting their belief with reality makes the trap so obvious. Grimoires like the Book of the Servant and Red Magic promise the sorcerer the world, commanding spirits to bring immense wealth, forcing people into love, turning ordinary rocks into rubies. But the stark reality? The sorcerer is the one getting played. To get these supposed powers, they have to commit acts of disbelief or polytheism. They become entirely subjugated by the exact same forces they think they're commanding.
To execute all this, Iblis relies on a highly organized hierarchy of what Daniel Defoe famously called deputy representative devils. The scholar Abu Umar ibn Abd al-Barr outlined specific classes for specific jobs. So you have the Amir who dwell right in houses, the Arwah who interact with children, the wicked Shaitan, the incredibly dangerous Marid, and the massively strong Ifrit. This isn't just random spooky stuff, it's a highly organized tactical deployment of forces. Which leads us to ask the million-dollar question. But who is really serving who here? Daniel Defoe's historical account gives us a rather hilarious, yet incredibly dark example. He writes about this Persian wizard named Ali al-Brahazan. Now, Ali fully believed he had commanded a powerful spirit. But to get the spirit to even appear, the devil made Ali go way out into the desert, walk in circles around one specific palm tree, and call out a name 3 times for every single circle. Ali thought he was this powerful, mystical master, but in reality, he was performing an absurd, humiliating ritual around a tree just to get a demon to look at him.
And notice how these demands escalate over time. The sources detail how the jinn constantly just exhaust the sorcerers with stringent, bizarre conditions. They might demand the sacrifice of a very specific type of animal, or demand 40 days of total isolation in a room with absolutely zero sunlight. Sometimes it's abstaining from water, or even writing on their own bodies with blood. The deceiver is always in charge, degrading the human mark step by agonizing step.
But here is where we get to the absolute masterpiece of the con. Section 4, Whispers and Adorned Speech. Because, you see, the most insidious deception isn't spooky magic or dancing snakes or dusty grimoires. It's much more subtle than that. It's psychological temptation. Consider this verse from the Quran, chapter 6, verse 112, inspiring one another with adorned speech as a delusion. The commentary from Tafsir Ibn Kathir explains this brilliantly. He notes that human and jinn devils inspire each other with beautified, highly adorned words. They take something that is fundamentally misguidance, wrap it up in beautiful, logical-sounding rhetoric, and present it as guidance. It's literally intellectual fraud. Let's move to and see how this builds into a complete psychological breakdown. It's a highly effective four-step process. Step 1, the initial temptation and whispering, probing for that one vulnerability. Step 2, masking the trap with that beautiful, adorned speech and false promises of power or pleasure. Step 3, the actual subjugation, pushing the person into shirk or polytheism and making them a complete servant to their desires or to the devils themselves. And finally, Step 4, eventual inevitable abandonment.
To actually achieve this level of subjugation, Iblis uses some very specific weapons. Let's look at Section 5, Weapons of Division.
In this kind of psychological warfare, the tools are deeply uncomfortably personal. Look at how these specific types of illusions target the human mind. The sihr of illness causes extreme, totally irrational fear or anger. The sihr of imagination creates false appearances. But we really need to pay close attention to the most destructive form, the sihr of separation. The source material actually describes this fascinating mechanism where a demon entrusted with separation presses on brain cells to physically distort perception. They make a husband and wife view each other in an ugly, distorted image, suddenly replacing deep affection with intense hate and paranoia, without any real logical excuse.
So the crucial point returns right back to that hadith in Sahih Muslim we discussed earlier. When a demon reports that he's successfully caused division between a husband and a wife, Iblis brings him close and says, "You did well." Destroying the foundational unit of human connection, the family, is literally Iblis's most prized achievement. Why? Because an isolated, divided human is by far the easiest mark for the deceiver.
All right, so after seeing the mechanics of this massive, ancient deception, how do you actually break free from it? Section 6, Shattering the Grand Illusion. The ultimate defense here isn't about finding a bigger, more powerful magic spell to counter it. No, it's a complete paradigm shift. It requires strengthening faith in Tawheed, the absolute oneness of God. The sources explain that a person must dispel the fear of anything other than Allah, recognizing that the deceiver actually possesses very, very little real power. The effects of magic are compared to the movements of the wind. They simply cannot cause harm except by the permission of their creator. Once you recognize the true, flimsy mechanics of the trick, it completely shatters the illusion. And here is the absolute final punchline of the con, immortalized right here in Quran 25:29. And Shaitan is to man ever a deserter in the hour of need. After all those elaborate rituals, the beautiful adorned speech, the grand, sweeping promises of wealth and power, the grand deceiver ultimately just abandons his victims right when they need help the most. The promises were completely empty from the very start.
Which leaves us with this really provocative thought to ponder. You might not be walking in circles around a palm tree in the desert or reading dusty ancient grimoires, but how does adorned speech and the illusion of control manifest in your own modern life? Where are the beautiful lies hiding the ugly truths today? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this deep dive has given you a powerful new perspective on the anatomy of deception.